Brexit, Corona and Johnson's unpopularity alienate the Scots from England. The future of Great Britain has never been as uncertain as it is now, experts say. When Boris Johnson recently prepared for his visit to Scotland, he spoke big. The past 6 months have shown why the historic and heartfelt bond that holds our four nations together is so important, he said. Once again, the sheer power of the Union was demonstrated. The Prime Minister himself knows that this claim hardly corresponds to reality. And that was exactly the reason why he decided to travel to the north in the first place. The union between England and Scotland is more fragile today than ever before. Last month, as the months go on, the Scots feel the urge to secede from the kingdom. The discussion about Scottish independence should have ended in 2014. At that time, 55% of voters voted to remain in the UK. The debate has been settled for generations, said the Prime Minister David Cameron after the referendum. But Brexit came 6 years later, and since then it has become conceivable that the country will fall apart. Scotland, which with 62% clearly voted to remain in the EU, should not be dragged out of the EU against its own will, said Nicola Sturgeon, First Minister of Scotland and Chairman of the Scottish National Party, the SNP, shortly after the Brexit vote. Another referendum on statehood is on the table again. For a long time, the population was less enthusiastic than the head of the SNP. Surveys suggested that the majority of the Scots wanted to cling to the Union. But since about the middle of last year, opinion polls have shown a gradual shift towards a yes for independence. This trend has continued over the past 6 months, and for the first time last week, yes is ahead. Several surveys in succession have shown that a majority of the respondents would vote for an independent Scotland. Current support for independence over such a long period of time is unprecedented, said John Curtis, political scientist at the University of Strathclyde in Glasgow, who is considered to be the country's most prestigious pollster. After all, he correctly predicted 4 general elections in a row. The future of the Union has never looked as uncertain as it is today, says Curtis. The exit from the EU is the most important reason. When the country set course for a hard Brexit last year, many Scots who had previously wanted to remain part of the kingdom began to flirt with the secession. All of the surge in independent support over the past year compared to the year before has been seen among Remain voters, says Curtis. It seems reasonable to conclude that Brexit is reasonable for this shift. In addition, Boris Johnson is very badly received by the Scots. Scottish historian Tom Devine told the BBC that no British Prime Minister since Margaret Thatcher has been as unpopular in Scotland as the current head of government. And he added, "We see a level of contempt for Johnson that Thatcher hadn't had." The Tories in the northern part of the country have known this for a long time. When it became apparent in autumn 2018 that Theresa May's tenure as Prime Minister was slowly coming to an end, Scottish Tory politicians launched a campaign to prevent Boris Johnson from becoming her successor. They feared that the populist would permanently ruin the Conservative Party's reputation in Scotland. The campaign was nicknamed Operation Ass, so it's clear who they were talking about, as one of the participants said. However, the recent upswing for the yes proponents has less to do with Johnson or Brexit and more to do with the corona crisis. Great Britain was badly hit. The country has the highest number of casualties in Europe. But while there are little differences between nations in terms of the extent of the pandemic, Nicola Sturgeon's crisis management is a sharp contrast to that of Johnson. The First Minister made a competent impression in the press conferences. She displayed that seriousness that was sought in vain from the head of government. And she acted more decisively. To a certain extent, the regional government in Edinburgh can make decisions independently of London. The so-called devolution at the end of the 1990s gave the nations of the kingdom extensive power of disposal in many areas. In the corona crisis, Sturgeon and her health advisors used the scope to maneuver Scotland through the crisis more carefully than Johnson did in England. The lockdown was not lifted overnight, but rather delayed and gradual so that the effects can be checked. Scotland has also been more successful in building the contact tracing system that did not rely on app development. Face mask wear was introduced in Scotland 2 weeks before the rest of the country. On the one hand, this has given Sturgeon's popularity a strong boost. In a survey at the beginning of July, the First Minister received 3 times the approval rate as Johnson. On the other hand, voters have seen that Edinburgh can make political decisions independently of London. A key argument of the nationalists is that Scotland can manage itself more effectively as an independent and small country, said John Curtis. The corona crisis has shown that there could be something to it. These were the most important political decisions of the Scottish government since Edinburgh was given more powers in the course of devolution 21 years ago. Edinburgh has determined who I can meet with, I can take a trip in my car, and whether I have to wear a face mask. This strengthened the hand of Sturgeon and the supporters of independence. People have more confidence in the Scottish government than those in London. Whether or not there will actually be a second referendum on Scottish independence in the next few years will depend primarily on the outcome of the regional election next May. At the moment, it looks as if the SNP is heading for an absolute majority in the Edinburgh Parliament. That would be a strong mandate for the nationalists to call for another referendum. Boris Johnson could simply put himself aside and refuse to approve a referendum. But the Westminster government cannot deny the people the right to change their minds, says Curtis. So, if the majority of voters vote for a party seeking a referendum, then London would be under heavy pressure to allow such a plebiscite. And if you now want to know more about European politics from a German point of view, YouTube has chosen another of my videos right here for you in the end screen, right next to your chance to subscribe to my channel. I'll see you in my next video. Click and enjoy. Viel Spaß!